Okay, hi guys. I'm back with another video after almost a month. Today's very short discussion again is on the morphological mimickers of various kind of benign diseases or even malignant diseases which involve the bone marrow. And today we are going to be talking about in very brief about what can look like a granuloma in the bone marrow. Secondly, if you interpret it the other way around, how can you miss a granuloma in the bone marrow? Now, why this topic came into my mind was when I was a senior resident in the pediatric setup where I'm working now. We had a case where the marrow showed a lot of fibrosis. The child was pancytopenic. He had hepatosplenomegaly. And we were not able to, exactly pinpoint. See, when I say a lot of marrow fibrosis, it doesn't mean it was grade 3. What I mean by marrow fibrosis was, yes, there was around grade 2, 2 marrow fibrosis was there in some part of a very good bone marrow biopsy. So we were, and then there were reactive changes, and in the marrow, as in all the three lineages were normal, and we were getting some areas of, edema fluid and hemorrhage, which is can be procedural also. So we were not able to pinpoint on why the case had pancytopenic, persistent pancytopenia with hepatosplenomegaly. Now, in a pediatric case, remember the dictum which I learned as a senior resident, tuberculosis or to be not just Mycobacterium tuberculosis, but any form of granulomatous infection in India, Mycobacterium tuberculosis is the most common, can occur in any clinical presentation. We hear of pulmonary, extrapulmonary, disseminated, etc. I have seen pediatric TBs occurring just with hepatosplenomegaly, without any ileocecal mass, just or any massive ascites. I have seen it occurring without any pulmonary features. In pediatric setup, lymph node TB is very common rather than the pulmonary ones. TB can, in pediatric cases occur in any form. Now, why I told you the diagnosis beforehand, because with the title granuloma, people who are listening to me from India or surrounding neighboring countries would easily think, okay, we are talking about tuberculosis first. People from, if I have an audience who's listening to me from the western part, of course for you tuberculosis or Mycobacterium tuberculosis may not be the first diagnosis, but for us it still is the first diagnosis. Concluding what we did in that case, so we were not able to pinpoint initially the cause of persistent pancytopenia in that child. What we did then was I mean, it was, I don't know, a stroke of luck maybe, when, when God wants you to diagnose, you diagnose. So we did serial sections of the bone marrow biopsy. Fine. The first serial section did not show much difference. But that area which looked like fibrosis increased a bit. Then we decided to go for a deeper section rather than just a serial. We tried to, go in deeper, and when we went in deeper with the area of fibrosis, fibroglanous tissue, a very tiny vague collection of epithelioid cells was seen. We did an AFB, but that was non-contributory. We asked the clinician to send some aspirate sample for CBNAT, which is the RT-PCR diagnosis, and that came out to be positive for Mycobacterium tuberculosis. Now, the takeaway from this case is the granuloma was not well defined. There was no necrosis. There is no other clinical symptom which can guide you to the diagnosis that the pancytopenia is being caused by the tubercular disease, the infection. Even if we had just examined, say, if I had, say, one slide has 4 sections of bone marrow biopsy and I had stopped at 8 sections, I would not have been able to diagnose it. I went in deeper. I got around 32 sections done of a very tiny biopsy. The tissue was almost exhausted by the end of the process, and that is sorry, not 32, but yeah, 32, no, 16, 4, 4, 4 and 4. And in the last 4 sections, did I see a vague collection of epithelioid cells? Keeping that thing in mind, and that thing has stayed with me till now. Was a case which was, say, around 4 or 5 years back. I am going to be just showing you how a granuloma might look in the bone marrow biopsy and what you have to look for. Remember, granulomas in the bone marrow biopsy are not always well defined. A lot of times the granuloma may not be accompanied by necrosis. It is a lot of times, I might show you perfect pictures, but a lot of times they are just vague collections of epithelioid cells. The two most common mimickers that you are going to get in the marrow are the stromal cells and the macrophages. Marrow is a dynamic element. It has all these things. And they can confuse you to diagnose something wrongly as epithelioid cells or a granuloma. So this is a very characteristic, nice, naked granuloma in the bone marrow with no lympho. These are erythroid cells with some lymphocytes, but no necrosis, nothing at all, but a good collection of epithelioid cells where you can with confidence say, yes, this is a granuloma. The Western world will call it sarcoidosis first. The Asian and the South Asian people will call it tuberculosis first. So, of course, then you have your ancillary workup. Most commonly, the infective granulomas have a collarette of plasma cells and lymphocytes. Necrosis is not that common. Now, this is an ideal picture. A lot of times what we get is just this much. That's it. So in my section, I got was just this much. And then I had to put a doubt that this could be a granulomatous disorder leading to pancytopenia. Okay. Now, causes of granuloma, if you open the textbook, there are many. There are infective causes which can be mycobacterial. The MAC complex, HIV in immunosuppressed cases have those. Fungal granulomas. So there are many other sarcoid. So there are many causes of benign granulomas. Hodgkin's lymphoma metastasizing might give you granulomas, but very, very rare. It is not something which is very common. Okay, so of course, once you identify the granuloma, you have to go back to the clinical and see. Like if you see it, suspect a fungal, you might get a lot of eosinophils or neutrophils around that granuloma. Then there are many other disseminated granulomatous disorders which are infective, which are non-mycobacterial in origin, which are not fungal in origin, which you have to read about. Okay. Now here what you see is a very, very, very vague collection. Can you see? This and this looks like maybe epithelioid cells, and this is what you are going to commonly get when you try and hunt for a granuloma in the bone marrow. You might not get that kind of a picture always. 80% times this is how what you get. So I wanted to contrast what you think you will get and what you usually get. And this is not necrosis. This is more like hemorrhage mixed with edema, degenerating RBCs. And then these are marrow elements. These are some histiocytes. This is a megakaryocyte. Now, if I really don't know, erythroid precursors maybe. This is fat space. Now, if you don't know, right? And if I say maybe say this cell could be epithelioid. You know, see, this is a stretched nucleus, just like this. Right? Now, this kind of collection you can also get in lymphomas. So you really need to correlate finding these cells with the actual history. Your stromal cells can also look like this, especially after chemotherapy, especially when the marrow has had new insult, the stromal cells plump up. So you have to be very, very careful. You cannot do IHC for everything. Histopathology, the acid-fast bacilli may not be very, very reproducible, the ZN for AFP. So then you have to go for PCRs. So when you look at a marrow, and if you have a doubt, please tell your clinician that you have that doubt. Because don't rely only on morphology to diagnose a granuloma in the bone marrow. See, now this is a very nice collection of what is looking like epithelioid-like cells with a lot of background necrosis or some, I don't know, one fat, no, so not even fat space. Then there's some plasma cells. This is the logo of the ASH Image Bank. I mean, I don't know, there's background, maybe there is necrosis or whatever. Probably, I don't know. This is a granuloma, could be tubercular. There is cuffing and everything, lymphocytes, a very dirty background. Could be a infective granuloma, could be a fungal granuloma. You need to, so when you suspect a fungal granuloma, look inside the cytoplasm of these histiocytes. You might get to see those fungus. They might be hemophagocytosed. You might look around this periphery. You might get eosinophils. You might get those fungal bodies. So a granuloma might look like anything in the marrow. You need to have a high index of suspicion to diagnose it. When I move ahead next time, there are a few more slides to show, two more slides. I will also show you vitamin D induced changes in bone marrow. Pediatric setup, a lot of times pancytopenia is caused by vitamin D. That is the deficiency of vitamin D. So that is why you all must be knowing vitamin D is no longer a vitamin, it is a hormone. So there is a reason it's a hormone. So it was very surprising for me to see that in pediatric population, vitamin D can wreak havoc in the marrow, leading the child to have pancytopenia on CBC. You used to think vitamin B12 is the only cause of pancytopenia. I have very frequently seen paratrabecular fibrosis with vitamin D deficiency. Of course, if you go to the pathogenesis, you know that bone marrow has those osteopontin, osteonectin, and Rankel protein, etc. matrix formation. So vitamin D affects all these things. So when the proper matrix is not formed, it might lead to marrow fibrosis. And a lot of times, we as pathologists do not survey the marrow cortex when we are looking at the bone marrow. You should, not only in pediatric cases, also in adult cases, to see what is the stature or what is the status of the bone metabolism going on in the body. A lot of times, commonly in pediatric, less commonly in adult, but not uncommon, but not, it is not a no in adults. Vitamin D deficiency can wreak havoc in the marrow, and you will be hunting for something and you're not even thinking. So my purpose is just to highlight a few things which you don't think about. So when you get a case pancytopenia, no cause, in pediatric, hepatosplenomegaly, you're thinking lymphoma, leukemia, you're thinking myelofibrosis, idiopathic childhood, and all those rare things. Think about the common findings first. Always think about the common things first, especially in the Southeast Asian countries. Okay. Now, this is not a giant cell. This is also not a giant cell. But can you see this? All these can be epithelioid. Also, these can be stromal cells. Why I first jumped to this was sometimes the amateur pathologist might look at this and think, oh, a giant cell, a foreign body giant cell. This could be a fungal. Or you look at it, all these are megs and they are dyspoetic. But what is to to pull your attention, what should pull your are these, not these cells, you see these stretched ones, and then you see some smudgy pink. This is edema fluid. I really don't know, this could be necrosis, and these could be just epithelioid cells, and that is causing dyspoetic megs. This is not a giant cell. A giant cell, the cytoplasm will not be like this, it will be more like that of a macrophage. This is the megakaryocyte cytoplasm, and this is dysbiosis going on because there is some sort of infection or tumor or whatever in the marrow leading to this kind of dysbiosis. This is a hypolobated meg in the paratrabecular location where it should not be. This is a feature of MDS. If it is a bone marrow biopsy of a primary MDS, this can happen in a lot of post chemo marrow, secondary dysbiosis, viral infection. So this is just a soft indicator. This is not a hard criterion. So when you talk about abnormal localization of precursors, abnormal localization of the lineage cells, you can ignore if you are getting some. What you need to focus. See, when I put this image to an amateur pathologist, your first thing you will notice is this. To me, I am also amateur, but when I say amateur, I mean the postgraduate. You will notice this. I will notice this. A more seasoned pathologist might notice the actual thing. So, I mean, a more seasoned pathologist will notice and say, yeah, this is 100% TB or 100% granuloma. I might say, okay, look, this looks very epithelioid. This could be. So my interpretation would be could be. My senior's interpretation would be will be, and your interpretation as a PG might just be, oh, what is this? This is what I did when I was a PG. You might not do it if you. I mean, I'm not generalizing what I'm saying. So yes, these are epithelioid looking cells. This is how a stromal cell might also look if there is a lot of marrow edema. This could be necrosis, this could be just intense edema with hemorrhage. Hence, we need to take sections, we need to go deeper, and of course, I might get a giant cell also, and then I'll be more confident, yes, this is a giant cell. So this, but yes, I will definitely raise a doubt with the clinician that this could be a granulomatous entity. Now you see, I don't know, it's not very clear maybe to a lot of you, but can you see these pink halos? The arrow is also pointing at a cluster of pink halos. Can you see these? These are not RBCs, these are fungal bodies. So that, see, all these are not RBCs, these are fungal bodies. So that kind of granulomatous response can be elicited by these also. Now this is not an epithelioid cell. This could be just a stromal cell. Right? This again doesn't look like a macro maybe just a histiocyte. This is a plasma cell. This could be just erythroid. But yeah, there are fungal bodies in this, and this is fat space. So you have to be very careful of what you are seeing and what you are diagnosing. So my purpose of this topic was just to discuss with you the practical problems that we face when we are diagnosing a bone marrow. Okay, ending my lecture here, someone requested me for a short video on flow cytometry interpretation. So what I'll do is, of course, I'm not that kind of an expert. I'm not from Tata or something, but basic interpretation of flow cytometry. It'll take me a couple of weeks to, put that lecture together in a format where I don't bore you, but I have to finish in 10 to 15 minutes. So I'll just show you few normal and abnormal of some basic loop, so that that person, I mean, the target to me is that person who told me that I need the basic, the, like, the bare minimum of BD facts to not I'm not promoting BD, mostly everyone has it, your wish, whichever machine you use, but the basics of facts. So, and this is not a sponsored video. So so a basic of facts. So my attempt would be to not teach you the basics of the whole machine. Whoever is doing it, whoever is interested will learn. Okay, and we all know as pathologists, just the graph interpretation, I'll try and put it together for some basic leukemias, the advanced and the recent and the MRDs and the TBNKs and the stem cell and hyperdiploidy studies. Or you can please, there are workshops held by Tata in India. You can go ahead and read with them, because that would be, I think, too much. My target is just for you to be able to interpret the basics. So I'll do that in, say, this month, and I'll try this to, I have some other lectures till then, I'll upload them, and I'll try and compile and, make something for you and whoever else is interested on that topic. So thank you for giving me a patient listening today, and I hope you have a good day.